Welcome, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today, in the latest of my deep dive videos, I'm going to celebrate one of astrology's most joyous alliances. It's when Jupiter and Venus, the two planets of fortune, come together in an exact conjunction. They unify in the sign of Taurus for the first time in 12 years. This occurs on the 23rd of May, but at 29 degrees and 23 minutes, which in itself is a critical point in astrology, known as the anaretic degree. But also, as much as this holds great potential, particularly in Taurus, where we can enjoy the good things in life, sensual pleasures, good food, maybe enjoying that good food to some excess with Jupiter in the mix, but critically it also influences everyday money, an area which has really taken a pounding for many of us over the last 2.5 years. I'm going to go through all of this with you. I'm going to share the natal chart, which helps us to understand the exact house, the area that the event is going to be most impactful in terms of us all. But also I'm going to share the solar chart so we can get an idea of the astrology from a zodiacal viewpoint. But the paradox on this event is that this occurs not just only on the anaretic degree, it also is in a conjunction with the fixed star Pleiades, also known as Alcyon, which can be very unfortunate. So how do the two energies play out? Please stay with me for more. If you're new to my channel, it's great to have your company. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you're a returning visitor, all your views and interactions are truly appreciated. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, as I've been sharing recently, a lot of people enjoy my videos without subscribing. Please help the channel to grow by clicking that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. If you'd like to get your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning, please see the link beneath this video where you can subscribe, or go to www.patrickarundell.com/subscribe. Each day I provide an overview of the key astrological influence, but also you can enjoy your ascendant, sun or moon sign in terms of the zodiac forecast. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please check out my testimonials below. I don't edit these as they come in, I share them as is. Discover what other people have found working with me. Now, if you are a patron, you can enjoy downloading a Venus but also Jupiter factoid. To the patrons I have, thank you so much for your support. I am going to be sharing more information future forwards. The last few years has been pretty hectic with a number of changes in terms of where we've been living, so expect more information, but you can become a patron from as little as $3 a month. And finally, if you'd like to evolve your astrological knowledge, check out my special combination package of 30% off. Your life roadmap report, your 12 months transits, all based on your unique blueprint. But if you know your natal tropical astrology well already, why not check out my draconic option? This is your soul, your karmic chart, which can be very different to your natal chart and helps you to understand the energy that you arrived in this life with. The natal chart is more the outcome of our activities in this life. Again, please see the link below for more. So this event last occurred in March 2012, and the big thing that happened at that time, we had the highest peak in the Dow Jones and the S&P in the 3 months preceding this event since 1991. So it was a huge uptick in the stock market. What's happening now? Well, of course, the Dow Jones has just burst through the 40,000 mark for the first time ever, but also the FTSE 100 in Britain has now shot through the 8,000 mark and is up to 8,400. By far the highest peak here in the UK since the COVID outbreak began. So that's really significant because the The sign of Taurus is about everyday money, but it's also about agriculture. It is also about food, whether we grow it or consume it. It can be enjoying the sensual pleasures of life, like intimacy, but in a more serious way, it is about our self-worth and about our values. The combination of Venus and Jupiter is a really desirable combination, because in traditional astrology, Jupiter is the greater benefit and Venus the lesser. But that doesn't mean that Venus has any less benefits. It can be lucky. Jupiter gives us a sense of positivity, a sense of possibility, a sense that things can get better. And generally it makes us feel more upbeat about our romantic involvements, Venus, but also about our money. And of course, since that lunar eclipse of November the 8th, 2022, which was really challenging, it occurred in Taurus, but it was conjunct the disruptive Uranus, but opposite the Sun in Scorpio, the sign of long-term finance, which was alongside Mercury, but they both T-squared those two positions back to the restrictive Saturn in the sign of the collective, Aquarius. And that's really where I predicted there would be a financial crisis developing before that event. And then, of course, on top of that, we had the situation in the Ukraine. So that obviously has affected energy prices. Now, it's interesting because the way Ukraine has more recently been using the weapons that have been provided to them, they are hitting a lot of oil and gas processing facilities in Russia, which will push up the wholesale price. So we are going to see a peak, but the squabble that comes with Uranus in the sign of Taurus is the sudden grabbing of land. It happened from the middle of the 1930s through to the early part of the 40s with the Second World War, and it's happened again not just in Ukraine, but we know also in Palestine. And whatever the rights and wrongs, that has been the actual facts. So we are seeing an uptick. Will it be sustained? Well, I feel that interest rates are likely to come down. And again, I did predict this about 3 months ago. This particular combination is very warm-hearted and sociable, and if we can get together with the people we care for and share those good things in life, whether it's those calorific goodies or some home baking or cooking, then for sure it's going to be really lovely. So, but this is a time that we also need to be aware that Jupiter and Venus do have a downside. They can make us a little bit lazy, perhaps a little bit wasteful, and rather self-indulgent. So it's important to be productive with our resources, which is also ruled by Taurus at this time. Now, I'm showing on the screen now the natal event chart based on Placidus, and my chart is based on Greenwich, not because I'm in the UK, it's because that's where the prime meridian exists. And that gives us, based on universal time, not British time, an ascendant at 2 degrees in Leo. But you can see the combination of Venus and Jupiter are in the 11th house. So that's very much about our network, our collective, our friendships, but also our future plans. And that's lovely too. But I want you to be mindful of the role of Neptune, because Neptune is also on the anaretic point at 29 degrees. So we have the position of Jupiter and Venus linking back to that position of Neptune. So Neptune's in the 9th house, which in its way is very Sagittarian, so therefore very Jupiterian. But of course Jupiter is also the traditional ruler of Pisces. So what that's saying to us, with Neptune being very much about spirituality, the 9th house being very much about philosophy, if we can feed into our earthly desires a new way of being, being much more conscious about how those who have or those who don't have would be a good thing, but also understanding that, we are in some ways very individual, but in other ways very similar, and a little bit more tolerant, certainly around communication and generosity of spirit, which definitely can come from Neptune and Jupiter in the sextile, and of course it's mutually receptive. That is something that we can definitely use from this event. The other big takeout is you can see the moon is opposite the sun. So later today, there will be the full moon in the sign of Sagittarius. But you can see that Pluto, the planetary transformation, is actually forging a very constructive link to both the sun, the trine, and a sextile to the moon. So let's look at the solar chart now. So this is assuming the zodiac as a whole, the first point being the vernal point and 0 degrees Aries. And that, of course, moves Venus and Jupiter into house 2. Venus in the second house, you know, it really is lovely. If we can pursue things that are earthy, that's going to be joyous. But it does mean that Neptune moves into house 12. Maybe what we're being prompted to do through our collective experience is just really understand that Neptune is coming to the end of a big journey, which began 159 years ago. It's going to move into Aries briefly next year, 2025. And then full-time for a long time, from 26. But we've also got Saturn doing the same thing. And of course, in 25, we've also got Uranus changing signs for its first visit to Gemini. So year 2025 is going to be a massive year for us all. Because let's think of the overall zodiac. Saturn and Neptune are in the sign of culmination. The sign of physical culmination is Capricorn. That's where we want to achieve things, raise our profile, and enjoy those material benefits. But Pisces is how we can reflect on the whole journey before. So what's played out in the previous 159 years with Neptune, that's been a whole spiritual process unfolding. But over the last 29 and a half years, 28 and a half years, we've had Saturn going through its whole journey around the zodiac. So there's a lot of Piscean energy, and that's pushing us to think very much about our psychological welfare, mental health, our emotional perceptions, but also to take responsibility for what we've done over those previous years as a race. And of course, some of it has been absolutely disastrous. So we're being pushed to raise our consciousness, but particularly about our use of resources, particularly about our obsession with materialism and consumption, and become much more conscious that if we enjoy each other and we enjoy sharing, that's the most enriching thing that comes from the experience of being a human being. Now, what about that fixed star? The Seven Sisters has a pretty dark reputation, and it can lead to accidents, blindness, violence. It can be feminine power used in a destructive way. It's also known as Alcyon. Now, it's interesting with this crash of the helicopter in northern Iran of the president of the country, because when that journey took place, the sun was just on the anaretic point in an exact conjunction with the Seven Sisters, and visibility was an issue. The plane has come down, there's been an accident, but it was travelling in a relatively short journey, very Gemini, and the sun is pitching up in the sign of Gemini as that event occurs. Don't ever underestimate the astrology. So what we've got with this event is an opportunity to be joyous, to celebrate, to appreciate the things that are sometimes those simple pleasures, but sometimes if there has been a little bit of ease in terms of inflation, we know the hardcore cost increases are still there. The fact that the headline is now coming down doesn't make life incredibly easier, but I think it is a bit of a turning point. And when equities go up, it's a sign that there's a greater confidence. Now, the Ukraine campaign to take out those petroleum processing plants could push up the price of petrol, but you know, they're taking a battering on all our behalves to protect the free world, and that's something that we should all be extremely grateful for, in my humble opinion. But we need to be aware that this particular aspect, lucky though it can be, and if you do enjoy a flutter, you may decide to have one, it is important to make sure that we're not wasteful, or we don't take the good fortune for granted, which is what can happen with Jupiter. You know, Jupiter can trick us into thinking that everything will fall into our laps, Go back a year. Have we, over the last year, had a material improvement in our resources? For most of us, the answer is no. That's why with Jupiter, as it moves into the sign of Gemini, it's important across the 25th, 26th, depending on where you are in the world. It's important, even knowing that it's technically detrimented in Gemini, knowing that Jupiter can work well for us, but we have to put the application and the perspiration in, which is very Saturnian qualities. And it's Saturn that often gives us the rewards. And a lot of astrologers on YouTube particularly have a very simplistic view of how amazing Jupiter can be, to be honest. So we need to be realistic, but we can enjoy something now, but particularly if we embrace that more spiritual energy of Neptune. But we also need to be aware that if we overdo something, it could lead to some mishaps. So particularly with Jupiter and Venus in Taurus, if you do enjoy a drink, it's important not to enjoy it too much at this particular time. So that gives you an overall perspective of what I feel this event is about. Yes, it can be called the luckiest day of the year, but we need to be mindful of those seven sisters, one of the most feared fixed stars that there is, because this event does collide with it. Also, when we have the anaretic point, things happen very quickly and very dramatically, and that's been proved with that helicopter crash. I'm now going to go through each of the 12 signs to give you a quick flavour of what you can expect for your zodiac sign in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon, for what this event means. So Aries, if you've really been grafting away over the last 12 months, trying to make use of the resources you do have, being inventive in terms of bringing new money in. Uranus has been pushing you for some years to try different approaches. There may have been some part of your situation that's winding up because of Saturn, so some things may be coming to a close, but new possibilities can develop. Self-confidence is one of the great assets of Jupiter. You can show that at this time, but also be shrewd with your decision making. Shrewdness can be a Taurus influence. Jupiter comes along and applies to Venus, could make us a little bit too overconfident. So important to stay grounded, obviously Earth, but also your generosity could be appreciated by someone at this time. Taurus, what I love about this aspect is that it can give you a big uplift in terms of your personal confidence, particularly in terms of your attractiveness. If you have gone through some big changes over the last year, it wouldn't be a complete surprise. I feel the springtime has been actually quite challenging for you. Particularly in terms of understanding who's for you and who is not. And you may have let some things go that actually seem very important not that long ago. But what you can do, and perhaps what you have been doing over the last 12 months, is crystallizing a new way of being, a new identity, certainly a new way of presenting yourself in terms of your clothes, your hair, some of your interests, but most of all, you need to be creative. You need to do the things you really enjoy, the things that enrich you, and also stick to the friends who enrich you too, because that Neptunian influence suggests there are people the energy you exchange with them is really good for you, but Saturn has also taught you over the last year who you would connect into whose energy wasn't good for you. So Gemini, the interesting thing for you is you've probably gone through quite a lot of deep work in terms of relationships over the last 12 months. Maybe some relationships have become more distant. Perhaps you've stepped back. Perhaps other people have stepped back from you. But also what's happened since Uranus moved into your 12th house full time from March 2019, you may have had a desire to be more separate. But at other times your moods have been up and down. It's been difficult to sleep, your nervous system overwhelmed at moments. But all of this, particularly with Jupiter over the last year, has seen a new philosophy developing, a much greater understanding of your spiritual philosophies and the things that you need to let go that no longer serve your greater purpose. So Even if it has been a tough journey, you're on the cusp of a big shift, a very positive shift, as this event occurs with the Sun in your sign forging an amazing link to Pluto. A big shift is coming, and you're going to come out of yourself. You're going to be much more dynamic. You're going to be recasting your identity over the next year in a much more outgoing, upbeat and extrovert way. Cancer, if you can get together with the people that are really enjoyable company in your life and have some kind of gathering, that is going to be the perfect way to make use of this particular event. But also, what you're being asked to do is be very mindful of your long-term future. There's nothing wrong with being optimistic, that's for sure. And if that optimism is linked to a relationship that's very positive, that also can be something that gives you a lot of glow. But equally, if you have been learning a lot, particularly in terms of knowledge base or travel or some kind of study with Saturn in your 9th house, that also, the energy and work that's been put in there can now feed into what you're crystallizing in terms of those friendships. But there is an irony because, of course, Venus and Jupiter are now going to move into house 12. And you may find that however jolly things might have been at times over the last 12 months, it's your inner world that you're going to start exploring in a much more powerful way over the next 12 months. Leo, your personality power is really coming up to the boil. The Sun's just moved into the most sociable part of your scope, but this combination suggests when it comes to your professional interests, your creativity, flair, but those people skills are really maximized. And if there is someone you need to impress, whether it is a professional contact, someone you're drawn to romantically, your authority, your natural authority can be showcased, but you don't have to try too hard. And your charisma is really at the heart of what is cresting at the present time. But if it has felt that you've been rather overlooked for rather a long time, this can be a moment when you realize that people are much more conscious of you than you may have imagined. Virgo, if you're on the move at this time, you're traveling somewhere exotic, somewhere with rich history, somewhere that helps you to escape, or on the other hand, it could be just spending time with people who are really different. You're certainly a truth seeker around relationships, but your freedom's important to you as much as your affection, and it has to be applied or received in the right way. So if the freedom and the affection are working well, so you can still be true to yourself yet connected, you've really nailed it. But also your professional aspirations are going to be showing up much more strongly from here on in. And it may be new skills or an inquisitiveness that's been developing that's pushing you towards a new way of earning a living. So Libra, Venus of course is your ruler as well as being the ruler of Taurus. For you it's very much about relating. Jupiter and Venus together for you in house 8 is about shared resources, but it's also about business. It's also about where we're most devoted and invested. Now that can be in a financial context, it can be in a romantic context. If you're lucky enough to really, really be close to someone and it's going well, it can prove to be extremely sweet at this time. But also around your business situation, if you have been really trying different approaches over the last 5 or 6 years, now there can be some kind of payback, which is really good. However, of course, Venus and Jupiter are about to move into an exciting, more expansive and adventurous part of your situation. And if something hasn't worked out for you romantically, or at the present time you're single, but you would like to have a connection in your life, be guided by the fact that all the things you've been learning in recent years, and of course it's been very intense with the square to Pluto, what you've learned is a lot to do with your boundaries, what you won't accept. And as Venus and Jupiter join up with the Sun as the week goes on in the sign of Gemini, which is your sister air sign, you can really enjoy breaking out. You may go on a solo holiday, you may join a new interest group, a hobby group or a club, but that actually can spark connections with a new set of people in a way which can actually be really uplifting. And from that, who knows? But certainly it's a time to decide whether you're all in or all out. Scorpio, this combination occurs on your 7th house cusp, which is interesting because Venus governs the 7th house, but not through its rulership of Taurus. It's through its rulership of Libra. But this combination suggests that if you give all sorts of ties a bit of a chance, you may be surprised by what comes back to you. Because often with yourself, you can be so guarded and cautious about dropping that guard that it prevents you opening up. And sometimes we do have to show a little bit of vulnerability in order to get close to people. But of course, we don't want to be showing vulnerability to the wrong people. We don't want to be too generous to the wrong people, which Venus conjunct Jupiter on the 7th house could see you do. So as the Sun has moved into your 8th house, that's pushing you to ask the searching questions, particularly when it's linked to your modern ruler, Pluto. So as this day goes on, you may make some key connections around certain involvements. It doesn't have to be only romantic, but what you want to feel is that your relationships are mutual. There's a respect both ways. It's not just give nor get. And if it is just give, the fact that Venus and Jupiter join up with the Sun in house 8 will see you wanting to don your detective's mat, decode what the reality is, and you may make a decision to bring something to a close, which may seem on the face of it to be very positive, but actually the other person is not as committed as you really need. But in a professional situation, your charm, your diplomacy, and your care in the way you interact with people can win you plaudits at this time, perhaps even a new contract. Welcome Sagittarius with your ruler in the mix, Jupiter. This can be a time when your generosity of spirit, particularly in terms of work or covering a colleague or doing some kind of favour or a practical task with a can-do attitude, can be really appreciated. But it's always important to make sure that it's not just about being a good egg, otherwise we can end up being an exhausted battery hen. So at times we need to be mindful of the balance between the give and the get, not in a cynical way, but sometimes if we're too willing, people can take it for granted. So the shift of energy that's developing now, seeing Venus and your ruler Jupiter move into house 7, is asking you to find that balance a little more sweetly. But certainly, if you are someone who really loves animals, if you do get one at this time, it can be a joyful event getting this new furry friend into your world. Or if there is somebody that you're connecting with at work or in the most ordinary of situations, whether it's at the bus queue, waiting for a train, in the supermarket, the 6th house is very practical, but there could be that spark. So watch out for it. It may not necessarily be verbalized, so do watch for someone's body language too. So Capricorn, for you, this aspect is about as good as it gets, because house 5 is about joy. It's also about sociability. It's about mixing and mingling. It can be about children if you have them, their pursuits. If you'd like to have a child, this is very auspicious if you're trying for a new addition. But also the 5th house can be where we show and share the glory of our talents. So if there's something that Uranus has been pushing you to be a bit braver about in recent years, doing things differently, being a bit more disruptive to others in terms of being more outspoken, the combination of these two together can bring enrichment to you. And the 5th house is also the sector of speculation and chance and risk. So if you are someone, despite your reputation for being rather cautious, who's got something that's exciting you at the moment, you've done your research and you're pretty sure on the bet, then that may be something you'll consider. If you're someone who's a bit risk averse, what you can do at this time is just enjoy a happy connection, whether it's meeting up with a friend for a drink, a meal, getting together with the people who really bring warmth and affection to your life. But it's very enriching at this time, so do enjoy the moment. So Aquarius, how have things been going around the home, family and emotional front? If we go back to May 2018, the 15th to be precise, Uranus moved into the sign of Taurus. Uranus, your modern ruler. Taurus, it's in full. It's not its best location. Uranus likes change. Taurus likes continuity. Uranus can also be to do with rather erratic decisions and perhaps a sense of needing space one minute and perhaps being up close and personal the next. But as soon as it moved into the sign of Taurus, it clashed with Mars, which was on the anaretic degree in Capricorn, so just tiny bit before your sign. But then in the following 5 months, Mars moved into Aquarius and went into a retrograde, which occurs every couple of years. So there was an immense amount of tension between your need to be an individual and for once be strong about who you want to be, Mars. Because Aquarius people can be, very aware of the needs of other people. So perhaps you've been more strident or were more strident at that point. You may have been paying for the outcome ever since. Or you may have done what I've done and moved 3 times, trying to find exactly where the environment, which is the 4th house, both internally and externally feels just so. Now, fortunately for us, we've got there, but it has been very disruptive. But the great thing about this combination is that as Venus and Jupiter come together, wherever we are, even if it isn't exactly as we want, a lot of people do live in suboptimal accommodation, whether it's damp, leaks, cold, and these things, I've experienced all of them and they're not fun. So it doesn't always work out in the most positive way, even if the planets suggest it should do. And that's where astrologers can go wrong. We need to be aware of everyone's experience, not just our own. So what I would say is that even if it has been tough, I feel that you know yourself so much better. You're much more clear on what's really important. And also because Pluto was in the 12th house, that's been stirring up a lot of sediment from the past as well. So for Aquarius people, the last few years has been tough. No doubt about it at all, particularly with Saturn's transit as well. So what we can gain now with this event, with the Sun back in the 5th house, which is sunshine and positivity, linking with Pluto, transformation in terms of physical or internal environments. But also this combination means however or wherever it is, try to see the upside in the equation, even if it isn't easy. Because there will be some ways of looking at things a bit differently. But I'm absolutely assuring you that the worst is nearly over. And next year, you're really going to experience a massive shift, which will be so positive, particularly finances being a real struggle in recent years as well, because of Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries and Uranus into its first blush in Gemini. When Uranus moves into Gemini, the aspects it forges are astonishingly positive. So that's all going to be very, very good for you as an air sign. And whereas when Uranus moved into Taurus and clashed with Mars, it was about as abrasive and rough and tumble as it can be. So there's a big wheels are turning here. But if you are keen on decorating, you are keen on spending time in the garden, you do have people in your family or your extended family that you're very close to, or you're not now spending time with people who used to bring you down and drain you and deplete you, and you've escaped from them, even if the emotional pain of that is still percolating through you, you are now able to take in the oxygen and live your life more on your terms. So this move that's about to happen of Venus and Jupiter into the 5th house, for the first time in 220 years, we do have the prelude of this combination, but it's just saying, I have survived. However it's been, you've survived. Salute yourself. Arise, O Aquarius. And then, as they move into the sign of Gemini, you're going to really be ripping things up over the next year in quite a sensational way. So Pisces, this event is really significant because Uranus has created a lot of tension around your communication in recent years. Perhaps a need to be quite distant. Perhaps you felt a lot of electric energy, which has given you headaches and a lot of neuralgic kind of pain. But this combination suggests that, all those different thoughts you've had, perhaps conversations, you're now much more clear about who you do want to connect with and the language you want to use. I love that saying, love language, because I think it's so true. Different people communicate to others or to people close to them in very, very different ways to other couples or other people. So whatever your language is or your way of expressing yourself is, Uranus has been provocative and challenging, but you're probably much more aware of who you really want to be, your identity within your beliefs and how you are going to connect. And now you can connect on this particular event to the people who really matter in such a lovely way. You also may feel very, very nostalgic, but also don't underestimate your ability to communicate brilliant ideas, whether it's to do with movies, to do with music, to do with writing, to do with technology, whatever really sees you inspired, you can showcase it now in an awesomely effective way. So whatever artistic or creative talents you've got, this is a wonderful high point. But then you're shifting into a period where it's all about the development of your emotional and tranquility and security. Thank you so much for joining me for this very special event. I hope it works out brilliantly for you. And remember, if you've yet to do so, please do subscribe and help the channel grow, or share, like, or comment.